Hello everyone, it's Jen from Old Tinkerer Studio. Welcome to the second tutorial of the 3D Game Assets series. In this tutorial, we will be modeling and rigging a low-poly treasure chest asset. This tutorial series assumes that you know the basics of Blender modeling. If you are new to Blender, I would recommend viewing my Blender Basics course before you begin this series. So let's go ahead and change the renderer to cycles. Then go into orthographic view and front view and tab into edit mode. Scale the cube along the x-axis by 2 Blender units. Then select the front face and inset it by 0.1. Then extrude the face along the y-axis by 0.1. Then select the left and right sides of the cube and inset them by 0.1. And extrude the right side face along the x-axis by -0.1. And extrude the left face along the x-axis by 0.1. Add a cylinder. Change its vertices to 16 and the cap fill to nothing. Rotate the cylinder around the y-axis 90 degrees. Then move the cylinder above the chest and go into wireframe mode. Select the bottom half of the cylinder and delete the faces. Go back into solid mode. And select the edge loop on either side of the cylinder and fill it. Then go ahead and select the entire cylinder and scale it along the x-axis by 2 Blender units. Then select the left and right side faces and inset them by 0.1. Select the right face and extrude it along the x-axis by -0.1. Select the left face and extrude it along the x-axis by 0.1. Then select the entire lid and go ahead and move it down onto the trunk. We need to add 2 vertical loop cuts along the lid. Left click once and then scale them along the x-axis by 2.8 Blender units. Then add a horizontal loop cut to the bottom front face and add one to the bottom back face. Then go ahead and select all the faces except for this very bottom one on the front and back. All the faces in the center of the lid. And inset them by 0.05. Then use your manipulator and move them down along the z-axis until they're sitting on top of these bottom front and back faces. Now add another cylinder. Change the vertices to 5 and the cap fill to N-gon. Rotate the cylinder around the x-axis 90 degrees. Then scale the cylinder along the y-axis by 0.1. Then scale the entire cylinder by 0.03. Then we need to place this nail along the front bottom center of the trunk. And make sure that it's flush with the trunk but not too far inside the trunk. Then we need to duplicate this nail and place the duplicates along the front bottom of the chest. You can place them about every 3/10 of a blender unit. Now go ahead and select all of these nails. Then duplicate them and move them to the top of the chest. Then go ahead and select 6 of these nails. Duplicate them and rotate them around the y-axis 90 degrees. And then go ahead and center them on the right side of the chest. Then duplicate them again and put them on the left side of the chest. Now go ahead and select all of these nails. Duplicate them and then put them on the back of the chest. Go ahead and select the 6 nails that we have along the side of the chest. Go ahead and duplicate them and then rotate them around the z-axis 90 degrees and place them on the side of the chest. Then go ahead and duplicate them again, put them on the other side. And for the top and bottom, you just duplicate them and rotate them 90 degrees around the x-axis. Then go ahead and select all of the nails. And duplicate them. and place them on the other side of the chest. Go ahead and select just one of these nails, duplicate it, and then place it along the edge of the lid. What we're going to do is rotate these and duplicate them and keep rotating them until they match this rotation of the lid along the top here. Once you have the nails on the front of the trunk done, what you can do is go ahead and select them all, duplicate them, and rotate them around the z-axis 180 degrees. Then you can just place them on the back of the trunk. And just make any fine adjustments you might need to make. Once you have those in place, go ahead and select all of the nails at the top of the trunk. Duplicate them, and then move them across to the other side. Now we're just going to add a little bit of structural support to the trunk part. Let's go ahead and add a cube. Scale along the x-axis by 0.2 and scale along the y-axis by 0.05. Then move it along the y-axis to the front of the trunk. And we want to make it flush with the inside portion of the front of the trunk. Then go ahead and make a duplicate and move it to the corner. Make another duplicate and center it between these two. And then select these two duplicates, make duplicates of them, and then move them over to the other side. Now let's add another cube. Scale it along the x-axis by 0.05 and scale along the y-axis by 0.05. Then move it out to the right side of the trunk. Go into the right side view. Scale the cube along the z-axis by 1.3. Rotate the cube around the x-axis by 45 degrees. Go into front view and move it back until it's flush like we did with these front cubes. Duplicate the cube and rotate it around the y-axis 180 degrees. Select both of these cubes, duplicate them, and we're going to move them over to the left side. Now we're going to make the lock. So let's add another cube. Scale it along the x-axis by 0.2. Scale along the y-axis by 0.05. And scale it along the z-axis by 0.05. Then move the cube until it is centered and flush with the bottom of the lid. Then duplicate the cube and move it down to the top of the trunk. Go ahead and grab the bottom face, extrude along the z-axis by 0.5, then scale the bottom face along the x-axis by 0.5, then tab into object mode. This will be easier to do if you tumble around a little bit. Add a cylinder. Make sure that you change the vertices back to 16. Rotate the cylinder around the x-axis 90 degrees. Scale the cylinder by 0.05 and move it in front of the lower part of the lock that we just made. Tab into edit mode. Then go ahead and add a horizontal loop cut. Left click just once and then move it down till it's about 2/10 of a blender unit from the very front of the cylinder. Then select the 4 central faces on the bottom of the cylinder. And extrude them along the z-axis by 0.1. Then we're going to scale these faces so they're flat. So hit S, Z, and 0. Then we need to go ahead and select these back faces on the rounded part. And delete them. And select this edge loop in the very back that's now open and fill it with a face. Tab back into object mode. And we need to move this onto the lower part of the lock. We want it sticking about halfway in and halfway out. Now select the trunk and add a Boolean modifier. Under Object, I want to go ahead and select Cylinder. And for our operation, we need to change this to Difference. Then click on Apply. Go ahead and select the cylinder and move it away. And now we have a little indented keyhole. And you can go ahead and delete this cylinder, we don't need it anymore. Make sure that you have the trunk selected and tab back into edit mode. Then go into the back view. And now we're going to make some hinges. So add a cube, scale it along the x-axis by 0.2, scale it along the y-axis by 0.01, and scale it along the z-axis by 0.1. Go ahead and move this top part of the hinge to the bottom center of the lid. And if you need to, you can go ahead and adjust the height of this. A lot of this is going to depend on how tall your lid is. But we want this setting on the very bottom part of the lid. Move it back. Then rotate it around the x-axis until it matches the lid angle. Once you have this in place, go ahead and make 2 duplicates and place them on either side of the original centered hinge. Go ahead and add another cube. Scale it along the x-axis by 0.2. Scale along the y-axis by 0.01. And scale along the z-axis by 0.3. Go ahead and select the very bottom face and scale it along the x-axis by 0.5. Then go ahead and move this up until it's at the top of the trunk. And since this nail is going to be hidden, we can go ahead and just delete it. Move this up. Okay, then like before, go ahead and make 2 duplicates of this lower hinge and then go ahead and center it under these other 2 upper hinges. And I'm just going to go ahead and delete these nails since they're going to be hidden. Now we're going to be making the handles, so go into front view and add a circle. Change its vertices to 16. Rotate the circle around the x-axis 90 degrees and fill in the face. Extrude the face along the y-axis by 0.2. Then select the front and back faces and inset them by 0.2. And then delete these center faces. Go ahead and select the circle and duplicate it and move it off to the side so we can use it a little bit later. Go into wireframe mode and select the left side of this original circle and delete it. Go back into solid mode and select this half circle and then scale it by 0.2 and then move it to the upper third of the right side of the trunk. Now go ahead and select this second circle and scale it by 0.2. And rotate it around the z-axis 90 degrees. And then move it so it's interlocking with the half circle. Go ahead and select both of the circles and duplicate them. Rotate them around the z-axis 180 degrees and then move them to the left side of the trunk. Now we're going to work a little bit on the interior of the trunk to give it a little bit of thickness. So select your lid and hide it with your H key. Then go into top view. Select this top face and inset it by 0.2. Then delete this face. Then go ahead and select this interior edge loop. Go into front view and go into wireframe mode. Extrude this edge down along the z-axis until it's almost at the bottom of the trunk. And that'll give us some thickness. Then go ahead and unhide the lid by using Alt-H. Now let's give this some material. Go ahead and select these inset faces of the trunk and the lid. And select the back face of the trunk. And let's assign a dark brown material. I'm going to use the hex code of 331A00. And assign the color. Then go ahead and select the remaining part of the trunk and lid, the wooden parts. And I'm going to make this a light brown color. I'm going to use the hex code of 804000 and assign this . Okay, now select all of the remaining parts, which is going to include all of these nails as well. And once you have all of those selected, go ahead and make a dark gray color. I'm just using a hex code of all 5s. And assign the material. And then we have our treasure chest. And next we're going to go ahead and rig it so we can actually open up the lid. Tab into object mode and deselect everything. Go into the right side view and add a single bone. In the armature tab, go ahead and turn on X-ray so we can actually see the bone inside. Then open up the bone tab and rename this bone root, and then tab back into edit mode. Make sure you have the whole bone selected and rotate it around the x-axis 90 degrees, and then just use the manipulator and center the bone at the bottom center of the trunk. Duplicate the bone and place it in the center back of the trunk lid. In the bone tab, rename this bone pivot. Now go into wireframe mode, and you'll see these crosshairs on this pivot bone, and we need to make sure that they are aligned with the back top of the trunk. Because this will determine where our lid pivots from. And it should be in line with this center back hinge. Now make sure that you have only the pivot bone selected, and then under parent we want to select root. Go ahead and tab back into object mode. Deselect everything. Select the chest and then select the bones. And make sure that you do it in that order, chest and then bones. And then we're going to parent the chest to the bones, so whenever we move the bones, the chest will also move. So hit Control P and with empty groups. Select the trunk, tab back into edit mode. Then go ahead and select the entire lid, all these nails, and the upper half of the hinges. and select the front upper part of the lock as well. Then open up the vertex tab, which looks like a little triangle. Make sure you have pivot selected and then click assign. So essentially we just assigned all of the selection here to our pivot bone. Now we need to go ahead and select our trunk part, as well as all the nails, the lock, the lower part of the hinges, and make sure that you don't forget the handles on the side. And once you have your selection made, go ahead and select Root under Vertex Groups and click Assign. Now go ahead and tab into Object Mode and select the bones. Then go into Pose Mode. Make sure you have your pivot bone selected and rotate it around the x-axis, and we can now open and close our lid. And there's our very simple low poly rigged treasure chest. I hope you found this useful. Have a good day.